First contact's folly. Ambassador Tizar of the Centauri Alliance fidgeted with his crystalline datapad as the human delegation approached through the pristine white corridors of Unity Station. His secondary hearts fluttered nervously beneath his iridescent scales. After 6 cycles of observing this newly discovered species, the Galactic Council had finally agreed to formal diplomatic contact. But something about these humans made him deeply uncomfortable. "Welcome to Unity Station," Tizar announced, his translator converting his harmonic speech into the human language called English. "I am Ambassador Tizar, representing the Centauri Alliance, and by extension, the Galactic Council." The human leader stepped forward, a tall female with dark skin and striking golden cybernetic eyes. Ambassador Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Government. "We're honored to be here." Her smile seemed genuine, but Tizar's behavioral analysis subroutines detected an undercurrent of amusement. The meeting chamber was designed to impress, with sweeping views of the surrounding nebula and holographic displays showing the technological achievements of council races. Tizar had specifically chosen this setting to remind the humans of their junior status among spacefaring civilizations. "We've reviewed your preliminary cultural exchange package," Tizar began, activating a holographic display. "Most impressive for a species that achieved FTL travel mere centuries ago. However, there are concerns." Ambassador Chen raised an eyebrow. "Concerns?" "Yes, your defense platforms around Mars, the orbital arrays at Jupiter, the facility at Titan." Tizar's scales shifted to a troubled azure. "They're unnecessarily large." Chen's cybernetic eyes wared as they adjusted focus. "I'm not sure I understand. They're sized appropriately for their function. A standard defensive platform in Council space is approximately 300 meters in length. Your smallest installation is 15 kilometers. It's excessive." "Excess is subjective, Ambassador. We believe in being thoroughly prepared." Tizar pulled up another hologram, a massive cylindrical structure floating in Jupiter's orbit. "This device, our analysis suggests it's a magnetic acceleration weapon of some kind. The energy requirements alone air. The Jupiter Defense Array. That's just a prototype." Chen smiled again, and Tizar's scales rippled with unease. "Would you like to see our latest designs?" "There are more. Of course, humanity has always believed that if something's worth doing, it's worth overdoing." She activated her own holographic projector, and Tizar's secondary hearts nearly stopped. The image showed a construct that dwarfed anything in Council space, a weapons platform that could have housed a small city, bristling with what appeared to be enough firepower to reshape continents. "This is Project Helios," Chen explained casually, "currently under construction in the Kuiper Belt. We thought it best to build it far from populated areas, given the potential energy discharge." "But why?" Tizar managed to ask. What threat could possibly require such overwhelming force? Chen's expression grew serious. "Ambassador, humanity learned long ago that the universe is vast and full of unknowns. We've studied our own history and realized that civilizations fall not because they were too prepared, but because they weren't prepared enough. Yes, our weapons are big. Yes, our defensive platforms could probably be smaller and still function. But we don't build for minimum requirements. We build to ensure that whatever comes, humanity will endure." Tizar slumped in his hover chair. "The Council will never approve membership for a species that maintains such destabilizing technology. With respect, Ambassador, we're not seeking approval. We're seeking understanding. Humanity comes in peace, but we come prepared for everything else too." As if to punctuate her point, a distant flash lit up the viewing window, just routine maintenance on Unity Station's defense grid. But Tizar couldn't help noticing how the human delegation didn't even flinch, while his own scales had shifted to alarmed crimson. Besides, Chen added with that same unsettling smile, "You haven't even seen our big guns yet." Tizar made a mental note to update the Council immediately. These humans weren't just another emerging species. They were engineers of excess, architects of overkill. And somehow, that made them more terrifying than any overtly aggressive race he'd ever encountered. The meeting continued for several more hours, but Tizar's mind kept returning to that casual mention of big guns. If what he'd seen wasn't considered big by human standards, what exactly were they capable of? More importantly, what had made them feel the need to build such things in the first place? The meeting continued for several more hours, but Tizar's mind kept returning to that casual mention of big guns. If what he'd seen wasn't considered big by human standards, what exactly were they capable of? More importantly, what had made them feel the need to build such things in the first place? As the human delegation departed, Chen paused at the doorway. "Oh, and Ambassador, those designs we showed you, they're already obsolete. We've got something much more interesting in development now." Tizar waited until the humans were well out of earshot before activating his emergency channel to the Council. "High Council, this is Ambassador Tizar. We may need to revise our first contact protocols, and possibly our definition of excessive force." In the corridor outside, Sarah Chen allowed herself a small chuckle. First contact had gone exactly as expected, which meant Project Olympus could proceed on schedule. After all, if the Council was this worried about their defensive platforms, they'd never see the real surprise coming. Humanity wasn't building big guns to fight wars. They were building them to prevent them. The fact that they worked exceptionally well at both was just an added bonus. The Jupiter incident. High Admiral Kexri of the Zentari Defense Fleet had seen many strange things during his 3 centuries of service, but nothing quite prepared him for the sight before him. Through the quantum-enhanced viewing screen of his flagship, the Eternal Vigilance, he watched the massive human installation that dominated Jupiter's orbital space. "Incredible," muttered his second-in-command, Commander Vess. "Their complete disregard for reasonable scale is almost admirable." The diplomatic mission that brought them to Sol's largest gas giant was officially labeled as a technological exchange initiative. In reality, the Galactic Council had dispatched their most experienced military observer to assess just how dangerous these humans really were. "Status of the human delegation?" Kexri asked, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with subtle anxiety. "They're preparing to dock, Admiral. Station Commander Helena Rodriguez will be conducting the tour personally." The docking procedure itself demonstrated the stark differences between their civilizations. While the Zentari flagship gracefully maneuvered with precise gravitational adjustments, the human approach to space station design apparently involved building docking bays large enough to accommodate small moons. Commander Rodriguez greeted them in what humans call the observation deck, a vast chamber with transparent walls that offered a panoramic view of Jupiter's swirling storms. She was shorter than Ambassador Chen, but carried herself with the same unsettling confidence that seemed to characterize her species. "Welcome to Jupiter Defense Station Alpha," Rodriguez announced. "We're honored to host the Zentari Defense Fleet's flagship. Though I must admit, we had to make some adjustments to our docking protocols. We're used to accommodating larger vessels." Kexri's translator almost glitched on the irony. "Larger than our flagship. The Eternal Vigilance is one of the largest military vessels in Council space." Rodriguez's smile reminded him uncomfortably of a predator's. "Would you like to see our shipyards?" Before he could decline, a massive shadow darkened the observation deck. A human vessel was emerging from behind Jupiter's bulk, a behemoth that made the Eternal Vigilance look like a shuttlecraft. "The UES Prometheus," Rodriguez said proudly. "Our latest deep space defense platform. Don't worry about the size. It's actually one of our smaller models." Kexri's bioluminescence shifted to a pale yellow of shock. "Smaller? Commander, that vessel could house my entire fleet." "Efficiency of scale," Rodriguez explained. "Bigger ships mean bigger engines, which mean bigger weapons, which mean better defensive capabilities. Simple physics, really." The tour continued through corridors that could have accommodated armies, past reactor cores that rivaled small stars, and weapon systems that defied conventional military logic. But it was the casual way Rodriguez discussed these monstrosities that truly disturbed Kexri. "And this," she said, gesturing to what appeared to be a massive cannon embedded in the station's superstructure, "is our point defense system." Commander Vess's analytical implants were practically smoking. Point defense. That weapon could crack a planet. "Well, yes," Rodriguez admitted. "But that's not its primary function. Would you like to see a demonstration?" Before anyone could object, she gave a command to the station's eye. The massive weapon hummed to life, its barrel glowing with contained energy. In the distance, a small asteroid, previously unnoticed, suddenly vanished in a flash of light that briefly outshone Jupiter itself. "Perfect accuracy," Rodriguez beamed. "Though we're still working on reducing the collateral effects, the energy discharge tends to disrupt local spacetime a bit more than we'd like." Kexri felt his third heart begin to palpitate. "Commander Rodriguez, I must ask, why? Why build weapons of such excessive scale?" Rodriguez's expression grew serious. "Admiral, humanity learned its lesson about being underprepared during our own wars. We decided that if we were going to join the galactic community, we'd do it our way, peace through overwhelming preparedness." A klaxon suddenly blared through the station. Rodriguez's communicator crackled to life. "Commander, we have a situation. The quantum anomaly we detected last week. It's back." Rodriguez's demeanor shifted instantly from tour guide to military commander. "Excuse me, Admiral, but you might want to witness this. It seems the universe has decided to provide a practical demonstration." The observation deck's screens shifted to show a tear in space itself, a writhing purple vortex that seemed to defy physics. "We detected similar anomalies in 3 other systems," Rodriguez explained. "2 colonies were lost before we could respond. But this time," she smiled that predator smile again, "this time we're ready." The massive cannon began to rotate, aligning with the anomaly. Kexri watched in horror and fascination as energy levels he previously thought impossible began to build. "You might want to engage your shields," Rodriguez suggested casually. "This gets a bit bright." The weapon fired, and for a moment, reality itself seemed to hiccup. The anomaly didn't just close, it was erased, along with a significant portion of nearby space. In the stunned silence that followed, Rodriguez turned to her guests. "So, Admiral, still think our weapons are unnecessarily large?" Kexri stared at the empty space where the anomaly had been, his bioluminescence shifting through colors that didn't have names in most languages. Finally, he managed to speak. "I believe, Commander, that I need to update my report to the Council. Significantly." As they departed the station hours later, Kexri couldn't shake the feeling that humanity hadn't built these weapons for show, or even for defense. They had built them because they knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. And judging by what he'd just witnessed, he wasn't sure he wanted to know what that something was. Project Prometheus unveiled. Dr. Samira Patel stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session, her weathered face illuminated by the hover platform's soft blue glow. The council chamber's vast amphitheater held representatives from over 300 spacefaring civilizations, all gathered to demand answers about humanity's latest project. "Distinguished members of the council," she began, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the chamber. "I understand your concerns about Project Prometheus. But there's something you need to know, something we've kept secret for over a century." High Counselor Sithtal leaned forward, their crystalline form refracting light across the chamber. "Dr. Patel, your species has already demonstrated weapons capable of erasing portions of spacetime. What could possibly justify further escalation?" Samira gestured, and a hologram materialized in the chamber's center. A massive structure taking shape in the depths of the Oort cloud, far beyond Sol's planetary orbits. Even as a projection, it drew gasps from the assembled representatives. "This isn't a weapon," Samira explained. "At least, not in the conventional sense. It's a shield, perhaps the only thing standing between our galaxy and complete annihilation. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Ambassador Tazar, now promoted to senior diplomatic liaison, raised his hand. Explain. Samira took a deep breath. 78 years ago, our deep space arrays detected something troubling. Gaps in the cosmic background radiation. Stars disappearing not just from the visible spectrum, but from reality itself. We tracked the pattern, and what we found. She adjusted the hologram. Now it showed a visualization of the Milky Way, with a massive void approaching from intergalactic space. We call it the entropy wave. It's consuming everything in its path. Matter, energy, space-time itself. At its current pace, it will reach our galaxy in less than 50 years. The chamber fell silent. High Admiral Kexri, present as a military observer, felt his bioluminescence fade to a pale gray of horror. That's why, Samira continued, we built what you call our excessive weapons. They weren't meant for war. They were prototypes, tests of the theoretical physics we'd need for Project Prometheus. The hologram shifted again, showing the massive structure in greater detail. It wasn't just big, it was astronomical, a construct that would dwarf gas giants. Project Prometheus is a phase shield generator, Samira explained. When complete, it will create a barrier of stabilized space-time around our entire galaxy. But to generate a field of that magnitude, we needed to understand how to manipulate energy and matter on scales that... She smiled faintly. Well, scales that the Council might consider excessive. Ambassador Chen stepped forward from the human delegation. We didn't tell you because we needed to be sure it would work. The Jupiter incident proved our theories correct. We can stabilize space-time against external collapse. We can save our galaxy, but only if we work together. High Counselor Sith Tull's crystalline form vibrated with concern. You expect us to believe that humanity, a species that only achieved FTL travel recently, has appointed itself guardian of the entire galaxy? No, Samira replied firmly. We expect you to verify our data, challenge our conclusions, and then help us. Because if we're right, and every test so far suggests we are, we don't have time for political debates about proper scale or excessive force. We need to complete Project Prometheus before the entropy wave arrives. She gestured one final time, and the hologram showed a simulation of the wave's impact. Entire star systems winking out of existence, space itself unraveling like a poorly woven fabric. This is why we build big, Samira concluded. Not because we want to, but because we have to. The universe doesn't care about our protocols or our sense of proportion. It operates on its own scale, and if we want to survive, we need to match it. The council chamber remained silent for several long moments. Finally, High Counselor Sith Tull spoke. Dr. Patel, assuming we verify your data, what do you need from us? Samira's expression was grim but determined. Everything. Every resource, every scientist, every scrap of knowledge your civilizations possess. Because we're not just building a shield, we're building an anchor point for existence itself. And if we fail... She didn't need to finish the sentence. The simulation continued to play above them, showing the inexorable advance of nothingness consuming everything in its path. In the gallery, Tazar turned to Admiral Kexri. Still think their guns are too big. The Admiral's bioluminescence had shifted to a deep purple of determination. No, he replied quietly. I'm starting to think they might not be big enough. The Nexus War begins. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the command center of Project Prometheus, surrounded by representatives from every spacefaring civilization in the Milky Way. The massive holographic display showed the approaching entropy wave in terrible clarity, a void that consumed light itself, now less than a year from the galaxy's edge. Final systems check, she ordered, her cybernetic eyes scanning multiple data streams simultaneously. The command center itself was larger than most cities, built to house the combined scientific and military might of an entire galaxy. Dr. Patel's voice came through the quantum comm. Shield generators 1 through 1000 reporting ready. Power output at theoretical maximum. The Zentari ships, their hulls now modified with human-designed enhancement modules, held position around the massive structure. High Admiral Kexry's bioluminescence pulsed with anxious energy as he monitored the defensive grid. Movement detected in Sector 7. A Volax sensor operator announced, their tentacles writhing with concern. The wave, it's accelerating. Chen's expression hardened. This was what they had feared. The wave wasn't just a natural phenomenon. It was reacting to their presence. It's intelligent, Dr. Patel breathed, watching the readings. Or at least guided by intelligence. It's actively trying to breach our containment zone. Then we'll just have to be smarter, Chen replied. Begin primary sequence. All ships, battle positions. The massive structure of Project Prometheus hummed to life, energy coursing through conduits large enough to swallow capital ships. The combined fleet of the galaxy's civilizations moved into formation, their weapons primed not for combat, but to channel energy into the shield matrix. Wave approaching critical threshold. Tizar reported from his diplomatic observation post. Impact in 10 minutes. Chen opened a galaxy-wide channel. All stations, this is Fleet Admiral Chen. Everything we've built, everything we've prepared for, comes down to this moment. Humanity's excessive engineering is about to meet its ultimate test. Stand ready. The entropy wave loomed closer, its absolute darkness, a wound in reality itself. As it approached, sensors began failing, quantum communications flickered, and the very fabric of space began to warp. Energy spike. Dr. Patel shouted. It's not just consuming space, it's weaponizing the consumed energy. Tendrils of anti-existence lashed out at the shield perimeter. Where they struck, reality itself seemed to fray and unravel. Shields holding, Chen announced, though the strain was visible in her expression. Commence Operation Worldforge. The massive weapons that had so troubled the Galactic Council now revealed their true purpose. Each one powered up not to fire destructive energy, but to reinforce the shield matrix, weaving new layers of stabilized space-time to replace those the wave was eroding. Multiple breaches detected. Kexry's voice crackled through the comm. The wave is probing for weaknesses. Chen's cybernetic eyes narrowed. Deploy the Jupiter array. Full power. The weapon that had demonstrated its power against the quantum anomaly now aligned with the largest breach. Energy built up in its massive barrel, not to destroy, but to create, to forge new space where the wave had consumed it. Admiral, Dr. Patel's voice was urgent. We're detecting something at the wave's core. A structure, artificial in nature. The holographic display zoomed in, penetrating the darkness of the wave to reveal something that caused even Chen's cybernetic systems to struggle with processing. A vast lattice of impossible geometry, neither fully material nor entirely energy, pulsing with malevolent purpose. So, Chen said grimly, now we know why we had to build big. We weren't just fighting entropy, we were fighting its architects. The lattice structure began to pulse, and the wave's assault intensified. Shield sections began to fail faster than they could be replaced. New plan, Chen announced. We're not just going to defend. We're going to take the fight to them. All ships, prepare for Operation Prometheus Unbound. We're going to show these entropy engineers why humanity's excessive engineering might just save the galaxy. As the combined fleet moved into attack position, Chen allowed herself a small smile. They had built their weapons too big, their ships too large, their defenses too strong. And now, finally, everyone understood why. The real war for existence itself was about to begin. Too big to fail. The interior of Project Prometheus's command center blazed with emergency lights as Fleet Admiral Chen processed the tactical data through her cybernetic interface. The entropy wave's architects had revealed themselves, and their assault threatened to unravel the very fabric of reality around the galaxy's edge. Structure analysis complete, Dr. Patil announced, her voice steady despite the chaos. The lattice at the wave's core. It's a dimensional inverter. They're not just consuming our space. They're converting it into energy to fuel their expansion. High Admiral Kexry's bioluminescence flashed with sudden understanding. That's why they target populated galaxies. The more complex the space-time structure, the more energy they can harvest. Then let's give them more energy than they can handle, Chen said, her cybernetic eyes glowing with intensity. Dr. Patel, remember that theoretical maximum we never dared test? The scientist's eyes widened. You can't be serious. The feedback loop alone could tear apart half the galaxy. Better half than all of it. Chen opened a channel to the combined fleet. All ships, execute Protocol Omega. Divert all power to the primary shield matrix. We're going to overload their harvesting system. The massive generators of Project Prometheus began to hum at frequencies that made reality itself vibrate. Every oversized weapon, every unnecessarily large power core, every excessive engineering project humanity had created now fed power into a single massive surge. Enemy lattice is responding. Tazar reported from his station. They're attempting to adapt their consumption rate. Good. Chen smiled grimly. Because that's exactly what we wanted. The shield matrix flared with energy that defied conventional physics. The entropy waves architects, sensing the massive power source, turned their full attention to harvesting it. Their lattice structure expanded, reaching out with tendrils of anti-existence to consume the energy. Now, Chen ordered, reverse polarity. In an instant, the shield matrix transformed from a power source into a quantum-level trap. The architect's own harvesting mechanism became their prison, caught in a feedback loop of their own making. Multiple dimensional inversions detected. Dr. Patel shouted. The lattice is collapsing in on itself. The void that had threatened to consume the galaxy began to shrink, pulled back into the very structure that had created it. The architect's lattice, designed to harvest energy from complex space-time, found itself overwhelmed by the sheer scale of humanity's power generation. By all the stars, Kexry breathed, his bioluminescence pulsing with awe. You planned this from the beginning, didn't you? Everything you built was exactly as big as it needed to be. Chen finished. We didn't just build defenses. We built a trap, disguised as a defense. The battle raged for hours as the combined fleet maintained the energy flow, watching as the entropy wave collapsed further and further in on itself. Finally, with a flash that briefly outshone the galactic core, the wave and its architects vanished into a singularity of their own making. In the silence that followed, Tazar approached Chen. Admiral, I believe I owe humanity an apology. We accuse you of excessive engineering, of building beyond reason. We never considered that excess might be exactly what we needed. Chen's cybernetic eyes softened. The universe is vast, Ambassador. And sometimes, the only way to fight something impossibly big is to build something even bigger. She paused, looking at the holographic display where the wave had been. Though I suppose we should tell the engineering teams to scale down their next project. Slightly. Dr. Patel laughed. Don't bother. They're already drawing up plans for a galaxy-wide early warning system. Something about building sensors the size of solar systems. The gathered representatives of the Galactic Council exchanged glances, then burst into laughter. They finally understood. Humanity's excessive engineering hadn't been hubris or paranoia. It had been preparation for a threat they couldn't explain until it was almost upon them. As the combined fleet began the long process of standing down from battle stations, Chen made a final entry in her log. Perhaps the greatest lesson we've taught the galaxy isn't about the size of our weapons or the scale of our engineering. It's that sometimes the best way to ensure peace is to be so thoroughly prepared for war that no one, not even entropy itself, dares to test your defenses. In the decades that followed, the galaxy would change. The Council's regulations on excessive engineering were quietly archived. Joint human-alien engineering projects sprang up across the spiral arms, And if the new project seemed unnecessarily large, well, that was rather the point. After all, in a universe full of impossible threats, being too prepared was no longer considered a fault. It was considered wisdom.